The dominant narrative over the last 6 months in the Republican presidential race goes like this. Donald Trump is the runaway favorite to be the nominee, and no one is particularly close to catching him. Now, over the last few days, though, there's been rising chatter that Nikki Haley might be emerging as a real and serious challenger to the former president, and that the time is now for everyone else in the race to, get out. A few things happened to trigger this unique Haley moment. One, Mike Pence ended his 2024 campaign, somewhat surprisingly. And two, a new Des Moines Register poll came out recently that showed Trump leading the way in Iowa with 43% of the vote, followed by Haley and Florida Governor Ron DeSantis at 16% each. Now for DeSantis, he dropped 3 points since the August Register poll, while Haley has risen 10 points over those last 3 months. Cue the talking heads. Here's Republican consultant Mike Murphy, a leading anti-Trump voice within the party, on Nikki Haley. He wrote this: "Alone among the contenders, she has a shot. Nikki stumbled to the top in the last 4 months because she is the most talented candidate in the also-ran caucus. She's also the only candidate running for real in both Iowa and New Hampshire. If she is able to pull off upsets in the first 2 states, Trump will be hobbled and she'll have a real chance to administer the killing blow in South Carolina." And then there was conservative talk radio show host Eric Erickson, who tweeted this: "Nikki Haley's rise is real. Her opponents have dismissed it so often and so loudly, they're now taking to airing attack ads against her. Her rise in Iowa complicates DeSantis' path because she overperforms him in New Hampshire right now, and it's more likely Pence fans go her way." Now, let me first say this. I don't disagree, broadly speaking, with a word of any of that. I do think Haley is, as Murphy argues, the most naturally talented candidate in the Republican field. Polling does show her emerging as the strongest alternative to Trump, and Haley would be a very good general election candidate against President Joe Biden. The issue I have, though, is with the idea that sort of undergirds all of those points, that Haley is on the cusp of turning this into a 2-person race, and if it becomes that, she will beat Trump. I just don't see it. So let's start with Iowa and that same Des Moines Register poll. As part of the poll, people were asked not just their first choice candidate, but also their second choice and any other candidate they were actively considering. This chart tells that story. Now, at first glance, you might think that the data is good news for Haley and DeSantis, actually. After all, 52% of Iowa Republicans either see DeSantis as their second choice or are actively considering him. Ditto Haley, who had a 39% second choice actively considering score. Those both compare favorably to Trump's 24% second choice or actively considering. But dig a little deeper into the DeSantis numbers. Let's say, and I don't expect this to happen, but let's say he heeds the call by Murphy and the like and drops out of the race tomorrow. That would actually be a very good thing for Donald Trump in Iowa. Here's the Register write-up of the poll. Of those who named DeSantis as their first choice for president, 27% named Haley as their second choice, but 41% say their second choice is Trump. Then there's this. Trump is already at 43%. He could win the caucuses easily with that number. Ted Cruz won the last contested Iowa Republican caucus in 2016 with less than 28% of the vote. Trump doesn't need to add any more support. If he keeps what he has, he very likely wins. And there's plenty of reason in the Register poll to think he will do exactly that. Let me quote from it one more time. Those who named Trump as their first choice are also more enthusiastic about their pick, the poll shows. Overall, 30% of likely caucus goers say they are extremely enthusiastic about their first choice for president. Among Trump voters, it's 47%, about twice what it is among DeSantis voters, 25%. Among Haley voters, it is even lower at 19%. Trump backers, by the way, are also more committed to him than are the supporters of other candidates. One more time, here's the Register. Overall, 54% of likely Republican caucus goers have a first choice for president and say they could still be persuaded to support a different candidate. Fewer, 41%, say their minds are made up, wrote the Register, adding this. But that number is much higher among Trump supporters, with 63% saying their minds are made up. Now sure, it's only Iowa I'm talking about here, but the story is basically the same in New Hampshire and nationally. In all 3 cases, Trump, 1, leads the field by a wide 25+ point margin. 2, is widely considered the second choice option for people who don't initially support him. And 3, has by far the most enthusiastic and committed base of support. Now, take those three facts and add them to these three. Fact one, Republican voters are perfectly happy with the GOP field and their options. Fact two, there has been very little interest in Trump alternatives, even with DeSantis' many problems. And fact three, a majority of Republicans believe Trump is their best chance to beat Joe Biden next November. For me, that's pretty much determinative, which is why I think all the talk about how the silver bullet in the race is to winnow the field down to just Haley and Trump feels kind of like a fantasy. The assumption that every vote currently sitting with every candidate not named Trump will suddenly migrate to Haley feels like a pipe dream. Do you really think that if DeSantis or Vivek Ramaswamy, who has called Trump one of our greatest presidents, got out of the race tomorrow, their voters would flock to Nikki Haley over the former president? There's just no way. So what? Look, I get the desire among the anti-Trump wing of the Republican Party to imagine a scenario where he is beaten. And of course, there's always the possibility that the very unexpected happens. But looking at the available polling data, I see no real signs that Haley is anywhere close to seriously challenging Donald Trump for the nomination, or that all she needs is for all the other candidates to get out of the race to make that scenario come true.